Hi, everyone. This is Rida Sabuni. On behalf of the Clean Energy Business Council, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us for this webinar on cutting energy costs in industrial facilities. It's a case study of an award-winning ISO 50001 project that was implemented in Oman. We're just going to wait a few minutes for others to show up, for more people to attend. So if you could please bear with us, we will start sharply at 1:05. Hang with us. Thank you. And if there are any questions that you would like to ask us while we're waiting, you could actually use the GoToWebinar software to ask us questions. So if there's anything you would really like us to focus on, or if there's a specific question, you could ask that now, and we could do our best to answer it while we are in our presentation. Okay, we will begin the webinar in just 2 minutes now. If I could ask Liam and Imam to please mute your devices if you're not speaking. Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. So thank you all for joining. On behalf of the Clean Energy Business Council, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you about cutting energy costs in industrial facilities. This is a case study of an award-winning ISO 50001 project that was implemented recently in Oman. So my name is Rida Sabuni. I am the Managing Director in the MENA region for Energetics, the consultancy. And with us today also will be Liam McLaughlin and Imam Ergawi, who will be presenting on this case study. So briefly, before we get into the case study, I just want to have a couple of slides to tell you about the Clean Energy Business Council and give you some context into this topic. So I'm also an advisor with the Clean Energy Business Council, and I lead the Industrial Energy Efficiency Working Group. So what is the Clean Energy Business Council? Well, it's a non-for-profit company that's based in Masdar City in Abu Dhabi. And it's an organization that represents the private sector involved in the clean energy sector across the MENA region. And the goal of our organization is really to establish a dialogue between the public and the private sectors and to drive the development of appropriate and much needed regulation and policy to support the development of the clean energy sector. So we are really the voice of the private sector, trying to mitigate the impacts of climate change, trying to address climate change, and by working together and harnessing our collective voice, we have a stronger voice than just any single company could have. So we work on behalf of our members to promote the uptake of renewable and clean energy technologies. We do that through partnerships with government and other stakeholders, as well as events and opportunities for collaboration. We work to develop and present different clean energy policy solutions with our member organizations. We provide advocacy and thought leadership in the form of white papers and other types of things like this webinar. And throughout the year, we have events like workshops that allow our members to share and promote their ideas. The bulk of our work happens in the form of working groups on different topics, including future mobility, clean energy policy, energy efficiency, and climate finance. We also have programs focused on women in clean energy and a program focusing on outreach to K-12 schools. So these are the different working groups and programs that I just mentioned. And our membership is very broad. We have over 100 members, ranging from very large organizations to smaller organizations. It's what you see on the screen here. And in addition to members, we also have a number of very important partners. Many of these are government organizations, and we work with these partners to fulfill our goals. So I want to welcome everybody. If they're interested in joining the Clean Energy Business Council, we would love to have you on board. It's a great way to connect with different stakeholders, to network, again, to amplify your company's viewpoints through our advocacy and lobby group work, and leverage the CEBC profile and networks to promote your messages. So if you are interested, you could actually email Ahmed at cebcmena.com, or you could visit our website at cleanenergybusinesscouncil.com. So with that, I want to give just a few minutes of context into this topic. Okay, so why is it so important that we talk about ISO 50001, especially here in the GCC and the MENA region? Well, I think the story starts with energy subsidies. So going back to 2011, the MENA region as a whole accounted for 50% of all global pre-tax energy subsidies. And you could see just a few examples of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. These are energy subsidies as a percentage of entire government expenditures in 2010. This is coming from a Brookings Center report. And so this is just not a sustainable practice, and the governments pretty quickly realized this. And what you've been seeing now for the past few years is, along with a drop in the price of oil, you've been seeing subsidies starting to be removed, right? So you have subsidies on fuels, whether it be diesel, natural gas, or gasoline, and then subsidies on electricity. Different stages for different countries, but they are slowly but surely being removed or reduced. And so this is a nice chart that shows the price of oil. It's from the Chatham House. And you'll see this in the headlines really across the region. So everywhere across from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, and in Oman. In particular, this headline in Oman is the one that is most relevant for this case study, because what happened in Oman is in 2017, as of January 1st, 2017, there was a higher tariff that was introduced for large electricity consumers in Oman. So these are the largest consumers, a lot of industrial, but also a lot of commercial sector that consume over 150 megawatt hours per year. And what happened was it became into a cost-reflective time of use tariff. So this graph shows the electricity tariffs here in dollars per kilowatt hour, and it shows it for the different countries and cities across the GCC. This is a CEBC chart, and you could find it on this link here. Most interesting thing to point out is this is not an error with this Oman data point. This is actually the highest tariff, which is in the peak months and the peak hours for these large consumers of energy. And so suddenly you had, as of January 1st, 2017, you had a very powerful incentive for the large consumers of energy to want to reduce their consumption of electricity and improve their energy performance. And so this is where something like ISO 50001 comes into play, and this is what motivated Areej, in fact, to pursue ISO 50001. This is another graph that shows residential GCC tariffs, which is also available at CBC. So that's the basic context, I would say, to this presentation. And I'll let Liam and Imam present the actual topic. I'll briefly say, so in terms of our agenda, so we have 20 to 30 minutes of a presentation from Liam and Imam. The final 15 minutes of the webinar will be available for questions from all of you. We really do welcome your questions and comments, and you could ask us those questions through the GoToWebinar software. There should be a chat box where you could enter in a question. It may look like one of these two images you see to the right. All of you will be muted, and so we do intend to collect questions through this means, and I will repeat the questions and pose them to Liam and to Imam. Okay, so with that, I'll get to the actual presentation. I want to introduce briefly Liam and Imam. So Liam McLaughlin is the Chief Technology Officer of Gen Europe, which is a company, European company based in Spain and Ireland. Liam has many years of experience in energy management and actually sits on the committee that develops and writes the ISO 50001 standard. So he is really one of the world's foremost experts on this topic. Imam Ergawi is the Assistant Manager for Industrial Engineering and Energy Management at Areej Vegetable Oils and Derivatives in Rusaid, Oman. In 2017, he initiated the energy management program at Areej, and he still manages this program. It's based on the ISO 50001 framework, and you'll be hearing about this topic from him. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Liam to start our presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Greetings from Ireland, where at the moment it's 17 degrees C in the middle of summer. So we are one of the countries that would benefit a little bit from some climate change. But yeah, so I'm going to speak a little bit about ISO 50001, and it's really good to be participating in this webinar with the Clean Energy Business Council. Rita, you might go to the next slide, please. You'll see here that the presentations are going to be in two parts. I'll give a 10 to 15 minute overview of what is ISO 50001 and the main aspects of it. And Iman will then get into the specifics of the implementation in Areej or Avad. Okay, so I'm going to describe energy management and 50001 and how they fit together. This is an overview of our own company. I won't spend long on it. We do a lot of work internationally. A very large amount with UNIDO, that's the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and I have a slide about that in a moment. Also with the ISO, we do some training and development with ISO. Most recently, we had a very large project in MENA region. It was the ISO MENA Star in 8 countries along the northern Middle East area. Yeah, so next slide, please, Rita. Yeah, this is the background. So you may have seen these. They're becoming more and more well known. These are the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. They have been signed up to, at this point, by every country. There are 17 of them. I won't go into detail on them, but most of them have an energy aspect in one way or another. There are only 1 or 2 that you would argue energy is not relevant. There are about 6 of them where energy is directly involved. I guess number 7, number 8, number 9, number 11, 12, and 13 in particular about climate action. Those ones are very energy focused. So that's a little bit of the context for what I'm going to say now. Next slide, please. Yeah, this again is giving some context. This slide shows the emissions of CO2 from energy. Okay, so at the moment we're somewhere around 30, 31 gigatons per year emitted globally from energy production. So this would be fossil fuel burning. This slide comes from last year from the International Energy Agency, and it suggests that we need to get below 20 gigatons per year by 2040. Okay, even these numbers are becoming outdated by the month now. I think the new target would be less than that. But what I want to highlight here is that we need very significant reduction in fossil fuel consumption globally. And I want to highlight the top bar. So there are a number of different pieces to the scenarios and how we get there. But the single biggest one is energy efficiency. That's the blue bar at the top. It's 44% of the solution to climate change is related with efficiency, i.e. consuming less energy. And we have the usual below that. We have renewables, nuclear, carbon capture and storage, all very, very important. But I just wanted to highlight that energy efficiency is the single largest component. And then within energy efficiency, ISO 50001 is a key topic. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, this is a summary of what ISO 50001 can achieve. This is a summary of a project run over the past 10 years now with UNIDO. We have about 7,000 factories around the world in close to 20 countries that have implemented ISO 50001. It is far and away the largest database of what you can achieve with ISO 50001. I mean, fundamentally, companies were saving about 10% of their energy, some more, some less, but in general, 10% was very achievable. And that was achieved without any capital investment. So it was achieved through better management of energy. That equates to approximately $250 million US. And that number is increasing every year. The companies that have maintained their systems, some of them are now 10 years old. The first project was in South Africa, and many of those companies are still improving and still saving energy. So as I say, it's a very large success, 4.8 million tons of CO2 achieved through a systematic approach to energy management. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide is a little bit tricky because it has a few clicks in it. But fundamentally, this is the purpose of having an energy management system. We want to reduce energy consumption. Okay. The primary driver for doing that in most organizations will be cost reduction, especially in your region now where energy costs are increasing. Rita gave a very good overview of the removal of subsidies. So cost control, cost reduction is a key driver for most organizations. But in parallel, if you reduce energy consumption, if it's for the purpose of cost, you will also reduce CO2 emissions. The majority of energy that we produce is still from fossil fuels. So if you're consuming electricity, it's produced primarily from fossil fuels. If we reduce electricity consumption, we will reduce CO2 emissions. So this in the center is the purpose of what we do it, of why we would implement an energy management system to reduce energy consumption. Now, if your organization is growing, we want to just reduce the rate of increase of consumption. But to keep it simple, the purpose of ISO 50001 is to help you to save energy, typically with a view to reducing costs. Next slide, please. So the first step in implementing the management system is to make the decision to change, because implementing an energy management system properly is really about organizational change. The management system covers a lot of things. It covers managing people, managing technical engineering systems, managing data analysis. But fundamentally, the biggest step and the first step and the most difficult part is making the engagement and the awareness that you are going to have to change behavior at all levels in the organization. In the standard, in the new version of ISO 50001 that was published late last year, this is covered in 3 sections. So you can see on the screen, section 4 is about the context of the organization. So for example, in your region, rising energy costs are part of the context. Climate change is part of the context. Section 5 is about leadership. Section 7 is strongly related with that. It's about getting support. So this first step is all about building commitment and support from top management in order to help you to make the changes that are necessary. Next slide, please. So the second step is about planning. I assume most people on the webinar are technical people, and this part is the most technical part of the management system. It's section 6 in the standard, and it's about deciding what you're going to do. So you look at your factory or your building or your whatever your business is, and you decide what measures can you take in order to reduce energy consumption. Next slide, please. And then you make those changes, you implement the projects that you've identified, you implement the behavior changes, you start to operate equipment, maintain equipment in an energy efficient way. So the savings are mostly made in this operational area. Next slide, please. And then we have section 9 in the standard, which is about performance evaluation. That's about checking that the system is working and that you are actually saving energy, and that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So this slide is a simplified overview of the management system, where in the first instance, you have to make this decision to actually implement the system and make the changes that are necessary, then decide what are these changes, implement the changes and check if they're working. And then finally, next slide, please. There's a section 10 in the standard about improvement and about continual improvement. So this is not a short-term project. This is an ongoing system. Imam will describe his system soon, and you'll see that It began last year, it was certified, but this year it's improving again and again and again. And next year, the same thing will happen. So that's an overview of the whole standard. Next slide, please. This is a cause and effect diagram, and I'll go through it quite quickly. But overall, on the right, we have a box there that says reduction of consumption. That's the purpose of your management system. On the bottom right, we have one method of doing this, or one cause of change of consumption. Can be structural change in your organization. You could have a new building added, new production line. You could shut down a production line. Those sort of structural changes will affect your energy consumption. On the top right, we have investment in energy efficiency, which is probably the one that comes to mind most commonly. This is where you spend some money on a new piece of technology or an upgraded technology, and that affects your energy consumption. Next, in the top center, we have renewable energy. We put this on the slide for completeness. It doesn't actually affect your consumption. If you put solar panels on the roof of your buildings, you don't change the electricity consumption of your buildings, you just change the source. But we put it on the side for completeness, but it's a different color because it has a different role to play. Then in the green box on the left, we have 3 causes of variation, or 3 methods of reducing consumption. One of them is operational. That's how we operate equipment. It's a technical topic about how do people operate and maintain everything from boilers, pumps, refrigeration systems, whatever energy consuming equipment you have. Below that, we have behavior. And by behavior, we mean the day-to-day behavior of all of the people in the organization. So this goes all the way from people switching off lights when they leave a room, switching off computers, but more importantly, how senior people make decisions. It's easy to get the top management to sign a policy and tell you have their support. It's a bigger step getting them to support you on a routine basis where they will make decisions, giving energy some level of priority within the organization. So that behavior is at all levels. The bottom left is about analysis and monitoring. This is where we get data and analyze what's going on in terms of consumption. This itself does not affect your energy consumption or does not save energy. It's when you take action using the data. These 3 on the left, the green ones, are all related with low cost energy savings. In the earlier slide about UNIDO, where we saved $250 million, that was saved primarily in those 3 methods. Probably half of it, close to half of it, was through good use of data. And then the rest was through behavior change and improved operations. You will see in the red box at the bottom these variables. The variables are the things that cause your energy consumption to change. So whatever building you are sitting in now, its electricity consumption is different now than it was, let's say, 3 hours ago. It's different than it was yesterday. It's different than it was at this time last week. So your consumption is continuously changing in almost all situations. And that change is caused by different variables. So it could be the weather. If the weather gets hotter, you would expect to use more energy in cooling systems, air conditioning, industrial refrigeration, whatever. If your production output increases, you would expect to use more energy to make product. So these variables cause your energy consumption to change. They are largely out of your control. You don't decide the weather. You typically don't decide the production output. So these have an effect, and sometimes it's quite complex. And I wanted to ask a question at this point. Maybe Rita, you can coordinate this, but we wanted to ask about how do you currently measure energy performance? Do you use something like specific energy consumption? Do you have normalized regression models, or neither of those? So I think there's an option here that you can answer this question. Hopefully it's popped up on your screen. And you pick which of these is the most relevant.
Yeah, it should be the entire screen for everyone. So if you could just take 30 seconds and let us know which of these options best fits your situation.
Typically, the most common is the middle one, where we have energy consumption per unit of production. That's traditionally very, very common. The first one, where we normalize for the various different variables using regression analysis, is a growing topic, but not too common yet. Okay. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to pick one of these. I will say that in the new version of ISO 50001, there was a version published in 2011 and a new one last year in 2018. The 2011 version was a little bit ambiguous. The new one is not ambiguous. It now says clearly that you must normalize for these variables. So we all have to move in the direction of learning how to do regression analysis and a little bit of statistics and all of that. And you'll see examples in a few moments in Imam's presentation. So if we go to
the results, I'll quickly share the results. So 39% of the audience use regression-based methods, 43% use specific energy consumption, and 17% use neither of these methods.
Okay, that's surprisingly good.
I've put the results on the screen.
Yeah, that's very, very good. Typically, we don't find a lot of people using regression-based methods. The most common method we come across is specific energy consumption, which, I mean, it is the most common here, but it's fairly well balanced in the group. It's beyond the scope of this webinar to go into the detail of it, but it has a lot of problems that you possibly already know about, that it doesn't always reflect what's really happening. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is my last slide, and then Imam will go into the detail of his own implementation. These are a list of, probably in my experience, we've worked with about 300 organizations globally implementing ISO 50001. And the common factors are, I mean, these are the success factors. They're also the causes of failure when they don't work. But having support and commitment from top management is really, really important. The second bullet there about integration into normal business practices is becoming very, very important. Traditionally, we had a situation where we had an energy manager who owned the energy management system, and the purpose of the energy management system was to get certified. So really, the management system was a thing that was operated between the energy manager and a certification auditor, and it was not part of the day-to-day operations. And it's really critical that it is. It will give you big benefits if it becomes part of the day-to-day job. We need a high level of enthusiasm from the energy manager. Very often we don't have that. We have somebody who is trying to implement the standard and develop checklists of what's needed and just documentation, but not getting fully behind the system. You also need good technical knowledge of how energy using systems work, which is rare enough that people know the changes you can make in how you operate a boiler or refrigeration or pumps or fans in order to get the same service from them, but consuming less energy. We have data analysis skills. You've already said a lot of you are already into regression analysis, but learning some statistics and how data analysis works is a really critical success factor. In all of this, as I said at the beginning, the purpose is to reduce energy consumption. The complicated part is measuring that consumption reduction, especially when the variables are changing and the energy consumption is changing. And you need to be open to change. And in many ways, this slide really reflects what Imam has done in Areej. They have unusually good energy performance and unusually good implementation through enthusiasm of Imam and also through the commitment from the top management. So that's me finished. Thank you very, very much. Next slide, please.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to be here today to present our successful case study of implementing ISO 50001 and also reducing our energy consumption through 1.5 years. So just before I start with the specifics of the project, let me go through a brief background about the company. Areej is one of the leading FMCG companies that was founded in 1980s to produce a variety of production products, like, for example, cooking oils, vegetable ghees, margarine, specialty fats, butters, mayonnaise, salad dressings, and ketchup. And we sell our products both locally and internationally in more than 30 countries around the globe. Some of our leading brands includes Manara, Suhar, Khafif, Jabal Akhdar, and Muscat margarine. Next slide, please, Rida. So our company is located in Rusail Industrial Estate in Muscat, Oman, and our plant capacity is 240,000 tons per annum with a staff strength of 750 employees. We are also part of the OMZIST group, or Omar Zawawi group of companies, and we are considered to be one of the largest companies in that group. We also consistently figure in the top OER companies list for the last few years now. And we have also partnered with some of the major brand names, or for example, Unilever, Imborg, Heinz, Hellmann's, and Knorr. So this is our background of Areej, and now I'll just start and go ahead with the specifics of the project. Please, next, Rida. So again, just to give you a background of our consumption prior to the implementation of the ISO 50001. This is a graph representing our consumption in the period of 2015 to 2017. You can see here that our electricity consumption was around 51 million kilowatt hours, whereas the natural gas consumption was 3.1 million cubic meters, and water was roughly 200,000 cubic meters. Next, please. Just like Rida and Liam explained briefly at the beginning of the presentation, one of the major motivational reasons for us to start adopting this management system was the cost-reflective tariff introduction in January 2017. This graph also shows the different time zones and the different cost tariffs for each of the individual months of the year. And you can see here that the huge jump in tariffs, especially in the months of May, June, and July, had a very bad impact on our bottom line and our expenditure for energy. So from the introduction, since the introduction, I mean, we had an increase of cost in utilities by 62% only from 2016 to 2017, without increasing our production or without increasing our processing. So the overall energy and water spending increased by 47% from 2017 to 2017, only due to that introduction of the cost-reflective tariffs. Next, please. So as a result, our top management wanted a proven method to get energy costs under control. And we started exploring different options, one of which doing standalone projects, like, for example, improving some technical aspects of some of the operational units in our factory, or maybe changing a little bit in the processing of our products. But that did not bring us back to the did not bring us back in good shape in terms of expenditure. So we tried to explore this strategic management system, which is the ISO 50001, to bring us back in control and try to manage our consumption and our expenditure more systematically. So if you see here in 2014, the graph shows that almost a steady state of consumption and expenditure in 2014, 15, 16, but in 2017 we had an increase of 47% without, like I said, without increasing our processing or production. Next, please, Rida. Yeah, we just didn't also know how bad the impact will be on 2018's consumption and expenditure in terms of the CRT. So we started implementing this project in roughly September 2017, and we were hoping to see some benefit in 2018, which we'll explain a little later in the presentation. So this is the implementation timeline of the project. We started deciding, the management decided to pursue ISO 50001 certification in August 2017, and then we had the project kickoff with Gen Europe in September 2017. After that, we had a 3-day of energy management system training just to understand briefly what is it all about and what do we need to do in order to fulfill the requirements. After that, we started the actual implementation from October 2017 to June 2018. During that time period, we had our internal audit done in May, and then we opted out for certification audit. In July, we had the stage 1 certification audit, and then in October, we had the stage 2 audit. And later on, after 2 weeks, I think we had the certification document issued to us. So it took us around 1 year, roughly, to implement this management system, and to start seeing the benefit, we needed around 3 months from the date of beginning to start see the reduction in consumption in our trends. Next, please, Rida. So a highlight of the main tasks that we had to implement was the establishing of scope and boundaries. We selected to go for a site-wide, and we also developed our energy policy that shows the management commitment and also sets the framework of this whole context of the management system. We also started by establishing roles and responsibility metrics for the whole team members that will be responsible for the implementation, just to make it clear and to make it more controllable, who will be doing what and when, etc. We also started developing our energy manual that describes our activities and controls our performance, and how we'll be doing data analysis and data collection methods, etc. We also started exploring the legal and other requirements relates to energy consumption and energy compliance that we had to fulfill. We listed that, and we also checked to make sure that we are fulfilling already. We also then started collecting energy data by developing more systems. We also started installing energy meters at some points of the systems, and we developed a lot of records and installation of SCADA system to help us generate the needed data for our monitoring and analysis purposes. We developed our energy balance, and we identified our significant energy users as well. And we started developing our energy baselines based on the collected energy data. Then we started working on the energy performance indicator, which is basically the regression models that monitors and controls our energy consumption. So with the collected data on a daily basis, then we started feeding those models, and we can easily monitor and see the deviations in the energy consumption on a daily basis. From the outcomes of the models, then we started highlighting those areas where it had some deviations, and we started acting upon in the on a daily basis and during our meetings, etc. So after that, we also started identifying the technical energy saving opportunities to act as our action plan to try to mitigate the increase in consumption and to try to further reduce our consumption. So what we have done is we developed a list of ideas, or a bank of ideas. We call it the ESO list, or Energy Saving Opportunities List, where we collected all the possible projects that was identified from either team members of energy management system or any other staff member as well. Then we had to study this idea technically and financially, and decide whether it should be implemented or not, and depending on the return on investment and the how significant the energy consumption reduction it will contribute to. We also started reviewing the operational controls to improve the conditions of our systems, such as refrigerations, ACs, pumps, boilers, air compressors, etc. And we have tried to challenge our set points and our operational parameters to try to further reduce the consumption while maintaining the same service level. Then we focused also on the competence and training. We have identified the gap, and during the gap analysis, we identified the weak areas in terms of competences in our staff, and we have tried to address that during periodical training and awareness sessions. So we had given training for compressors, for chillers, and for refrigeration system to allow people to act more actively on monitoring and analyzing and also improving their energy consumption trends. Then, like I explained, we had the internal audit done in-house, and then we opted out for the certification audit. So this is basically a summary of the tasks that we had to implement in order to fulfill the requirements and also to meet the requirements for the ISO 50001. Next slide, please. So the highlights of the energy management system, like I explained, we just had identified around 170 ideas in our bank of ideas, or ESO list. The major savings from the ESO list was related mainly to compressors compressed air reduction in pressure, recovery of heat from steam condensate, centralization of air compressors, and optimizing of some certain cycle time for certain process, and also installation of steam and oil lines, operational control optimization. And during that period, we also provided training for 160 AVOT staff on different aspects, like I explained, steam, compressors, refrigeration, and then effectively measuring energy performance improvement. We also installed 102 smart meters that helped us collect energy data electronically. So that gets fed into the models, and then we monitor the performance. Next, please. Some of the challenges we faced during the implementation was related to data collection. Prior to the implementation, we were not having enough data generated, as we were not interested, or not interested, but we were not focused on energy consumption, so we did not bother about collecting enough data for monitoring our energy performance. The quality also of the data, since we were not having proper systems in place for data collection, so the quality was not enough to rely on those systems. Documentation of recording of the data and plans. A lot of cases we had a lot of projects, or small projects, to be implemented without the proper documentation or study before the implementation happens. So we worked on the improvement of this as well, and the availability of information, especially in the technical aspects of the operational controls, how to verify and how to calculate the expected savings from different ideas. Our staff experience, also general experience with energy management, was not up to bar, so we had to work on that by providing more and more awareness sessions. Next, please. So from this graph, you can see the overall savings in the period of January to November 2018. The first column in the table, you can see the targets, and then the actual at the bottom. So the target for electricity was for 15% versus 10.4% actual year to date. Similarly, for natural gas and water, you can see how much we have achieved versus the target. And you can see from the graph itself that all of the lines which represents different energy uses are going down, which indicates savings throughout the year. So overall, we have saved, or that will be next slide. If you can go, please, Rada. Yes, so remember when I said we were not sure how much we will save in 2018, but since we had the implementation start in 2017, and then at the end of 2018, when we measured, we have seen around 16% of savings combined. So electricity, natural gas, and water, we have saved 16% out of that. So again, if you see the return on investment from these graphs, you can say that the payback period for this project was around 2.5 years. So which is very interesting for a lot of companies to do so. Sorry. Next, please, Rada. This is a copy of the management certificate for ISO 50001. We have achieved this in October 2018. And this year also we started working on the continually improving our energy performance trends by setting new targets for this year and working upon by identifying more and more opportunities and ideas. So if you can go next, please, Rada. So yes, this is the moving forward plan for us, and which represents the targets for 2019. Electricity is 8%, natural gas is 10%, and water is 11%. These targets are set based on the previous year's consumption as well as the management's expectations for this year's performance. So from their targets as well as our confidence in our systems, we then start to work on and by identifying ideas, try to identify the weaknesses in our systems, the gaps, which areas can we improve better. We try to explore new technologies, new best practices, with the help of consultants and with the help of our expertise as well. So also our plan, we are planning to give more technical trainings to enable our staff to be more competent in terms of managing and using their systems, and also to identify better energy saving measures. And we also might consider investing in some solar systems, solar energy systems in the future. So with that, I hope I have given you a brief introduction and summary of what we have done in our company and how we managed to achieve our certificate at the end of the journey. Thank you all, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them at the end of the session. Rida, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imam. So, of course, we mentioned this was an award-winning project, and it was actually. So it was a winner of the 2019 Global Leadership Award in Energy Management. This is an award that's given to the top ISO 50001 certifications across the world. It's given by the Clean Energy Ministerial, which is a global forum of energy ministries across the world. Clean Energy Ministerial was established in 2010 to basically help countries to share best practices and promote policies and programs to encourage and facilitate the transition to a global clean energy economy. So across the world, Clean Energy Ministerial members account for approximately 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions and 90% of global clean energy investments. And so you could see Areej was actually selected as the top ISO 50001 certification for the industrial category. Other award winners included 3M and other companies in India and Indonesia. So with that, I actually want to open it up to some questions and discussion. I think we'll go 10 minutes on this session, so we'll go 5 minutes past the hour. As we wait for questions, so I think please ask your question to the questions part of the GoToWebinar software. But I'm going to ask all of you a couple of questions to help us understand everyone's background. So I'm going to ask first, what type of organizations do you work for? Are you an industrial facility? Are you a government? Are you a consultancy or something else? I'll give you a few seconds to respond. And then if you have other questions, please put it into the chat box and we will answer it very shortly. Okay, I'll give about 10 more seconds to answer this question. Okay, so it looks like most of the people here are actually consultants. We need to do more work on getting governments involved here, some industrial facilities and some others. And then let me also ask about what is your role within the organization? So are you senior leadership, management, technical staff, consultant, or something else? Okay, I'll give about 10 more seconds to answer this question. And I see some questions coming in. Thank you for that. Okay, I'll share the results here. It looks like the majority of the room is technical staff or engineers, but also a lot of senior leadership and management and consultants. Okay, interesting. So let me start by asking, so there's a question that has come in. Can I know how did the technical people sell the idea to top management, and what kind of budget has been allocated for this project? So perhaps Imam, if you could comment on this, so what was the process? I think it was you that actually was the advocate for this energy management system. Can you, describe the process of actually getting your top leadership's approval, and anything you might want to comment on in terms of budget?
Yes, sure. So what I've started with, when I met Rida in one of the conferences talking about energy consumption and energy efficiency management systems, I liked the idea very much, and then I went back to the management and started to explain the benefits that we may get from implementing one of those systems in-house. So I started to explain to him what is it all about, and why is it more important to use such a strategic system, rather than standalone projects or maybe randomized projects to be implemented. And so he was like interested. Okay, maybe you can set a meeting with these guys and try to understand and hear from them what they have to offer. And that was basically it. I mean, Rida came to our company, and I think he did a really good job in presenting what we can get out of it. So the management was convinced, and then we started the project with them. So
yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to a return on investment. I think the management in Areej's case, they had two primary objectives that helped them to make the decision. Number one was getting their costs under control. That was critical. And number two, which was interesting, they wanted to send a message to their customers and to their board that they were doing everything they can to get energy costs under control.
Yes, and this is one of the, this is the second main important idea that they have considered, is the cost of implementation. At that time, they were also considering some changes in the systems. They were thinking about upgrading new systems or changing few equipment. So I tried to convince them that without bringing our consumption in control first, then there's no use of changing the whole system. So again, with a competitive pricing of this, of utilizing this management system versus changing the whole system of equipment and processes, again, that was one of the convincing points for us.
Okay, and in terms of the budget, I'll just comment in general on this, and perhaps we could follow up offline on any more details. But in general, the cost of ISO 50001 certification can be broken up into several components. Internal staff time is one important thing. You need to have staff who are able to spend time on this project. So it was Imam, but it was also many others because it is a cross-functional team that is involved with the energy management system. The certification cost, to have the external certification, there is a cost associated with that, to have the auditor come in and to check your system meets the requirements. Metering is not really a required cost. You can, have an energy management system. You can have ISO 50001 without spending anything on metering. Typically, there is metering involved, and so there may be some small costs involved there. And then the final cost is external consultants. So in this case, it was Gen Europe. It is, I would say, recommended to have some external consultant involved because these are people that have very experience with it and can help the organization and guide them along and make sure that time is being used well. And so it just helps to ensure effective project implementation. Okay, so the next question I have is for Imam. Imam, could you share some examples of your regression analysis? Do you use CDD and track efficiency of boilers and refrigeration, etc.? So Imam or Liam, do you want to comment on that?
Liam, would you want to go ahead or?
Yeah, Liam here, yeah. What we did in the beginning was we built some regression models for each energy source. And we did use CDD, the cooling degree days, which is measuring how hot it is and how much cooling load would be required. We also, in the case of Areej, the models are slightly more complex than in some organizations because they have a very large product mix. So the different products have a different impact on the energy consumption. So we had one model for electricity, which took account of the weather because the refrigeration systems would be using more energy on warmer days. The amount of each product type and a couple of other process parameters. The same in gas and also in water. So they were the three main models. At the moment, there's a new data system being implemented, and that will allow more models to be developed at lower levels. So for different production process, we should be able to build individual models. And we have found, and I think Imam will agree, the modeling itself has shown some opportunities and some anomalies. So it's a very powerful tool when you practice it and get good at it.
Okay. The next question we have is, in terms of positive incentives, do you feel that governments can do more to engage large industrial facilities to persuade them to reduce their energy footprint? So maybe Liam, would you like to comment on that from your experience? And also I'll have a comment as well.
Yeah, this is a strange topic in the context of ISO 50001. At the moment, globally, most certifications are in Europe. Close to 50% of all ISO 50001 certifications are in Germany. And that's because of a very, very significant government incentive. They give tax relief. So you get a lot of tax back from for your company if you're certified to ISO 50001. This question comes up a lot. People ask, how can we incentivize companies to do it? Typically, the payback on implementing the management system or even implementing the most important parts of it, regardless of certification. But if you start thinking and moving in this direction, the payback is very, very rapid. It can be as low as 2 or 3 months or maybe 6 months, but it's not a big investment relative to the savings you make. And therefore, it's a little bit strange. Why do we need incentives for something that is so fast to pay back? Now, I would qualify that with one thing. The payback and the savings are completely dependent on the enthusiasm of the energy manager, and on the support from the top management. The ISO 50001 is not a magic bullet. If you produce all the documents and get certified, but don't start implementing change, then there is no payback. So personally, I believe there shouldn't be a need for incentives, because if you implement it fast, the results are extraordinarily good. Is that okay?
Yeah, and I think I'll add from my perspective in the GCC, I do think that the governments can do more, actually. My experience is more with the U.S. Department of Energy, which offers technical assistance and offers, kind of ways for companies to get recognition for being involved in programs, and that's how they better engage with companies on this topic. I think in this region, definitely those are two things that can be done. So more technical assistance in particular is needed, because this is not a very well-established topic in this region. So that's something I hope the governments in the region are going to look more closely at. In addition, I think the smartest thing a government may do is, in terms of cutting subsidies, but then diverting part of the revenues that you're getting from those from this kind of a program, and divert it into energy efficiency type of programs, technical assistance, maybe subsidized energy audits, or subsidized ISO 50001 implementations. There are different governments around the world that do exactly that, but it's something that I think the region that over here does need. I know Saudi Arabia is starting a project very soon to have a program to basically promote ISO 50001 in their industrial and commercial sector, and that's something Energetics is going to be working on and starting very soon. Okay, so we have another question now from Sarah, which says, do you feel a dedicated energy manager is essential to the success of the program? So Imam, maybe your quick perspective, and then Liam, your perspective from dealing with many organizations.
All right, for me, I think it is essential, actually. It's very important to have someone who takes this very seriously and try to find out on a daily basis how can we implement and improve our energy consumption. More often, if you leave it for everyone to be part of it, or maybe no one to be part of it, then we tend to lose focus and to forget about it until maybe before the audit we start cooking some documents and so on. So it's very important from my perspective to have someone focused on this on a daily basis and try to find out immediately the deviations, sources, and to act upon it. So,
okay, great.
Maybe more, yeah.
Liam, what do you feel from, you've worked with hundreds of organizations. What do you feel as a whole?
I think it depends very much on the size of the organization. Certainly in the larger organizations, and there's a rule of thumb in Europe, I don't know how it would translate, but that if you were spending more than €1 million per year, so that would be kind of 1.2, let's say, $1 million. From there upwards, you should be thinking about a full-time energy manager, because it justifies the role. But in the majority of organizations that I've worked with, they don't have a full-time energy manager, even one spending a lot more than that. I haven't met very many full-time energy managers. It is becoming more common. It's very common that somebody with a different technical role, it could be a maintenance manager or an engineering manager, incorporates the role of energy manager. But I think as climate change becomes a bigger issue, as energy prices become more significant, we will see more and more energy managers, full-time people. But it's they're a rare breed, I think, at this point.
Yeah, just to add on what Liam said, I thought from her question, a dedicated energy manager as a role, not as a full-time employee. So if this is the question, yes, you don't have to have a full-time energy manager. I'm not a full-time energy manager. If you can see from my title, I'm also acting as an industrial engineer in my company. So no, you don't need a full-time energy manager, but you need to have someone who's this role has been assigned to manage and control on a daily basis. So yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
we
if
have
I
another.
could I add just one more sentence to that, really, that if you get the management system working properly, you will end up with a number of people, key people, that it could be 3, 4, 5, depending on the organization. And then the role of energy manager becomes spread a little bit deeper. And that's probably a better solution, to have a number of people working together as a team on the thing rather than just one energy champion.
Okay. So we have another question from Mohammed. So for Imam, the trigger of your shift in management was the new tariffs introduced. Do you think this is the most effective way for getting the rest involved, the rest being organizations and companies? So in other words, if I understand this question correctly, if there were not new tariffs introduced, what would be the most effective way to get involved with energy management?
Okay, the new tariffs could be one of the reasons, or could be one of the ways. Maybe other companies are more interested about reducing their CO2 footprint. Some companies may be interested in just purely reducing their consumption to reduce their costs. So it is different for different companies, but this is definitely one of the biggest way or biggest motivations for companies to start to adapt to this new management system. But it really depends on your company or organization in question, whether they want to just reduce the bottom lines or CO2 emissions, or to be more competitive in the market price, things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Liam, do you want to comment?
I think I would agree very much with Imam that we are now in a very changing world. For example, on Saturday, I joked earlier that the temperature here is 17 at the moment, but on Saturday last, the temperature hit 35 degrees inside the Arctic Circle. So at the very north of Sweden, inside the Arctic Circle, the temperature was 35 degrees, which is completely off the scale for that region. So there are lots of changes happening, and I think those changes are manifest as climate change on the one hand, but energy cost is going to become a much more serious issue, as perhaps the cost of climate change is built into energy prices. So you're losing subsidies at the moment. You may end up having to pay for carbon, which we do now in Europe. And then the drivers are increasing all the time. So I think ISO 50001 and a coherent, systematic approach in all organizations, small, medium, and large, is going to become more and more critical. So I've been doing this a long time, but I think now the situation is becoming much, much more serious and more important.
Okay. With that, we've run a few minutes over, but I think we'll have to close the webinar. Are there any final thoughts, Imam or Liam?
I would just say, again, congratulations to Imam on winning the award.
Thank you.
Areej is not the typical company that we work with. We have many, many cases where they just want to produce documents and get certified. I think if your organization, or if you, a lot of you are consultants, if your clients are very enthusiastic and committed, you can do really good things with ISO 50001. I think it's one piece of the puzzle that's needed globally at this stage. So I wish you all very, very good luck in implementing ISO 50001 and in making energy savings. Thank you very much for attending the webinar.
Yeah, and I'll just say on behalf of the Clean Energy Business Council, thank you all for joining the webinar. A copy of the presentation and a recording of this session will be available on the Clean Energy Business Council website very soon. So please be on the lookout for that. We'll send an email as well to give you notice when that is available. So thank you all again for joining, and wish you all a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Rita. You've done a good job moderating this and organizing it. So thanks to
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Imam.
Bye, Liam. Bye, Reda.